ladies and gentle-saurs. Welcome to Assessing Survival, the series where we take creatures from both our world and fiction, placing them in different periods throughout history, as well as some fantastical settings from outside reality. In today's episode, we will be taking raptors, more accurately Dromaeosaurs, and placing them in the Ice Age, the Pleistocene epoch, over 2 million years ago. We'll explore how some of the most advanced predators of the Mesozoic shape up against some of the most fearsome and impressive animals that the new dynasty of mammals has to offer. I'll be using 4 different categories to assess their ability to survive. These scores will then be added up for a final assessment score. 1 to 3 being that they are unlikely to or simply cannot survive, 4 to 6 being they can survive but with great to moderate difficulty, and more than 7 being they will survive with little to no difficulty. Those categories are environment suitability, strengths and weaknesses, prey items, and competition. In the latter half of the video, we will speculate on how our raptors may evolve to better fit their new environment. Before we get into those categories though, I'd like to take just a minute to explain some things. The title of this video is a little vague, and other than it being the title most likely to be clicked on and shown to people browsing on YouTube, I left it this way so that I could speak on which Dromaeosaur I'd like to use. And it came down to 3 choices for me: Velociraptor, Deinonychus, and Utah Raptor. These 3 raptors cover the vast range of sizes seen in Dromaeosaurs throughout the Cretaceous. My first choice was of course Utah Raptor, the largest of the family. These guys would clearly do much better than the others given their size. They were larger than the vast majority of their would-be mammalian competition. They could reach heights of 2 meters or 6.5 feet, lengths of up to 6 meters or 20 feet, and weigh well over 1,000 pounds or around 500 kilograms. They are also more used to the dry and open environments that dominate the Pleistocene. We already know these guys would do pretty well, at least in terms of their matchups against mammals of the era. So, for the sake of making things interesting, I decided to not go with Utah Raptor. Then I looked at Velociraptor. Definitely the most famous of the Dromaeosaurs, but also one of the smallest. Velociraptor was at most half a meter tall, just over 6 feet or under 2 meters long, and weighed no more than 20 kilograms or 45 pounds. They also lived in Cretaceous Mongolia, an area that would be extraordinarily hot and arid compared to the Pleistocene. So for those reasons, I decided not to go with Velociraptor either. And finally, I came to Deinonychus, who lies between the other 2 in terms of size. The highest, emphasis on highest, of estimates for Deinonychus put them at a height of 3 feet or under 1 meter, a length of 3.4 meters or 11 feet long, and almost 90 kilograms or 200 pounds. This puts them at a very similar size to many of the predators in the Pleistocene, such as wolves and some big cats. Also, out of all the dinosaurs in the Dromaeosaur family, Deinonychus has the most compelling evidence for pack hunting behavior, which is something I'm going to explain further in the video, so don't go smacking that keyboard just yet. I decided to go with Deinonychus because I think it'll give us the most interesting survival assessment, as well as the most interesting Spec-Evo later on. Again, we will be using their most robust estimates for their size and weight. All 3 of these raptors lived in ecosystems that were much hotter than the Pleistocene, which brings me to my next point. The title also says we'll be placing them in the Ice Age, and while the Pleistocene is in fact the Ice Age, people often think of this Ice Age as the entire Earth being covered in snow and ice for millions of years. This is simply not true. On average, during the last glacial maximum, ice sheets and glaciated areas extended up to approximately 2,000 miles or 3,200 kilometers from polar regions towards the equator. Equatorial regions, though cooler than today, did not experience the harsh conditions of the Ice Age. I will not be placing them directly on these ice sheets, but we're still going to be putting them pretty far north, where they will still experience harsh winters, but see some solace in the changing of seasons. I'll be placing them in North America, and gee, big surprise, Madley's putting an animal in North America again.
You dirty bastard, you've done it again!
I know, but this time I have a better reason for it. I thought about placing them broadly in the Northern Hemisphere, but something happened between North America and Siberia around 20,000 years ago, and if you don't already know what that is, don't worry, again, I'll explain more later on. So yes, the title is a little vague, but hey, you clicked on it, didn't you? The Pleistocene epoch was characterized by repeated glacial and interglacial cycles. During the peak of glacial periods, also known as the glacial maxima, average temperatures in the northern hemisphere were significantly colder than today. It's estimated that global temperatures were about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius, 9 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit, cooler than present-day averages. This is a sharp contrast to the Cretaceous period. Estimates for global temperatures then were around 6 to 14 degrees Celsius, 11 to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than today. Deinonychus lived in North America between 145 to 99 million years ago, and at that time, the environment which it lived in was very similar to modern-day Louisiana. These areas were marked with floodplains and river valleys and very dense forest, which is very different from the Northern Hemisphere in the Pleistocene, which was largely made up of open mammoth steppe and boreal forest. I'll put it bluntly, if we put Deinonychus into the glacial maximums of the Ice Age, they're not going to last even a year. Such a drastic change in temperature and environment would be too much to handle. So, to give them a fighting chance, we're going to be placing them at the beginning of an interglacial period so they can have the time to adapt to the colder weather and more open environment before the long winter comes.
Ducks are always right eventually. Winter is coming.
However, even if we do this, it will still be much colder than the Cretaceous. Their only saving grace is their size and their feathers. Large, warm-blooded animals tend to do better in colder regions as their mass helps them retain body heat in frigid temperatures. And given our larger estimates of up to 90 kilograms or 200 pounds, Deinonychus are quite heavy for their dimensions. Couple this with feathers that covered most of their body, they may be better equipped than we think. But still, the drastic environment change doesn't give me much confidence, taking their score down quite a bit. Environment suitability score, 2.5 out of 10. This is where Deinonychus can make up for some lost points in the last category. Dromaeosaurs are some of the most well-armed predators in the fossil record, with just about every part of their body being capable of inflicting damage. Deinonychus is estimated to have a bite force that is either on par or greater than that of a spotted hyena, which is supported by the presence of pretty well-defined teeth marks from Deinonychus left on the bones of their prey animals. There are, of course, their iconic, large, sickle-shaped claws on both feet, seen in all Dromaeosaurs. It is not believed that most Dromaeosaurs use their sickle claw primarily for slashing prey items. Simulations of this behavior using scans of their sickle claws did not yield results that would suggest it was used for this purpose. Rather, they are believed to have been used, in tandem with their claws and forelimbs, for pinning prey items much like modern birds of prey. They may also have been used for climbing, or holding on to the side of very large prey items like Tenontosaurus, something that they could definitely replicate in their new environment. Further suggesting this is their feathers, which are believed to have been very long on their forelimbs. These feathers would help stabilize them in intense combat situations. Their long, flexible tails, also covered in long feathers, would act as a rudder during pursuits. Speaking of pursuit, these raptors may not have been as fast as the movies would lead you to believe. The length and build of their leg bones suggests that Deinonychus was not so fast, believed to be slower than modern-day ostriches. More reasonable estimates for the speed of Deinonychus place them around 40 kilometers per hour or 25 miles per hour. Though they wouldn't be as fast as, say, wolves or lions, they could certainly run for longer than them. This is because dinosaurs utilize unidirectional breathing. When birds, dinosaurs, and crocodilians breathe in, the air is pulled into air sacs, and then into their lungs when they breathe out, which means that their lungs are constantly receiving fresh oxygen-rich air, unlike mammals, who breathe directly in and out of their lungs. This gives theropod dinosaurs like Deinonychus incredible stamina, likely allowing them to maintain their top speed for much longer than many mammals can. Contrary to what films like Jurassic Park had led people to believe, pack-hunting Dromaeosaurs is not a widely agreed-upon theory amongst paleontologists. But the intelligent groups of raptors seen in media are inspired by multiple findings of Deinonychus skeletons around skeletons of Tenontosaurus, an iguanodontian ornithopod that would be far too large for a single Deinonychus to take down. Other evidence that supports this behavior is the discovery of footprints from these raptors that indicate a group moving together. This suggests that Deinonychus may have indeed traveled with one another, rather than converging only to gang up on prey like Komodo dragons. Though we don't know for sure, and it may be discovered otherwise in the future, for this video we will be going with the assumption that Deinonychus lived and hunted in packs, but not go so far as to say they were as sophisticated as wolves or lions. I'm sure I'll see plenty of you yapping about that in the comments, so I made sure to provide all my sources in the description below. There's a common misconception that because these Dromaeosaurs had hollow bones, they would have been incredibly light and brittle. This is simply not true. Most dinosaurs, including large sauropods and even T-Rex, had hollow bones. This works with their robust circulatory and respiratory systems to deliver oxygen throughout their bodies. Flying birds today have delicate hollow bones because they need to be light in order to achieve flight. Deinonychus, as far as we know, did not fly. Deinonychus and other Dromaeosaurs had binocular vision, much like birds of prey and their distant cousin the Tyrannosaurus rex. This, of course, suggests that they had incredible vision that allowed them to be skilled hunters. Though they may suffer from a deficit in speed, and the environment will be very unfamiliar and cold for them, they make up for a good amount of it with their incredible arsenal, group behavior, and robust build, bringing their score up for this category quite a bit. Strengths and weaknesses score 8 out of 10. Pleistocene North America has a pretty diverse list of animals that are potential prey items for Deinonychus. The easiest and most likely common prey for Deinonychus would be smaller animals. Rodents, birds, peccaries, and small ungulates. Really anything their size or smaller are prime targets. It's believed Deinonychus preyed on Zephyrosaurus, a small dog-sized Thecylosaurid, more frequently than Tenontosaurus. Small mammals such as rabbits and peccaries fall within a manageable speed and agility range for Deinonychus. However, deer and especially caribou would be much faster, but the raptor's advanced respiratory system would likely allow them to run these animals down over great distances. Which brings us to more mid-size herbivores, animals that are going to be closer in size to Tenontosaurus. Moose, bison, elk, camelops, horses, and glyptodons. Moose and elk, as well as wild horses, will be the easiest among these, but not a cakewalk. Moose and elk, male or female, can be incredibly aggressive even without warning. Kicks from these animals could seriously injure a Deinonychus, just as it would a feline or other predator of the same size. Even these larger ungulates are much faster than Deinonychus and will have to be hunted with ambush and coordinated tactics, or ran down over great distances, something that may be harder with horses, which are known to run at full speed for up to 3 miles. The same goes for bison and camelops, who were even larger and more robust than their modern relatives. If the raptors can avoid direct attacks from these animals, they may be able to take them down much quicker than wolves or hyenas. Deinonychus could latch to the side or back of these animals using their sickle claws and strong hands, and inflict serious wounds with both scratches and bone-crushing bites. Then there's the Glyptodon, the mammal kingdom's attempt at the ankylosaurid build. Even the most fearsome predators of the Ice Age likely had a lot of trouble trying to take down one of these guys. If Deinonychus is going to take them down, it will have to be by targeting between their armored plates, or by exhausting them enough to make doing so easier. Glyptodon had a pretty robust tail, lined with thick bony spikes, and its cousin the Doedicurus, another glyptodont, even had a Stegosaurus-like spiked tail that would surely be a familiar threat to the raptors. And finally, we have the megafauna that the Ice Age is known for: mammoths, mastodons, and the giant ground sloth. Deinonychus doesn't have a great matchup against any of these large animals, but neither do many of the carnivores of the time. Even the strongest of predators couldn't do anything to healthy adults of these animals. Rather, they would take advantage of poorly guarded young and sick individuals. Let's talk about the ground sloth first, specifically Eremotherium, the largest giant ground sloth present in North America, slightly larger than the closely related Megatherium in size, reaching an overall length of 6 meters or 20 feet, and a height of 2 meters, 6.6 feet while on all fours, and possibly up to 4 meters or 13 feet when it reared up on its hind legs, weighing anywhere between 4,000 to 6,500 kilograms, 8,700 to 14,000 pounds. They of course had the ability to rear up on their hind legs and swipe at their opponents. This would have made them incredibly intimidating, making Deinonychus unlikely to attack them. The Eremotherium's machete-sized claws would make quick work of a raptor. A large group of Deinonychus may be able to take on a very sick adult, but it is probably most often young individuals that Deinonychus will be preying on. Now, of course, let's move on to mammoths and mastodons. Much like with the giant ground sloth, healthy adults are out of the question. Females will be traveling in herds, and males will be too large to even consider. It is again rather sick and young individuals that will be targeted. Their tusks are very curved and swoop down quite low. better suited to be swung around like clubs rather than stabbing like spears. Depending on which species, mammoth tusks can be anywhere between 3 and 4.5 meters long. A swing from these tusks from even a sick mammoth could shatter the bones of any predator, dinosaur or mammal. Feline predators of the time, like the American lion and Homotherium among others, also didn't have great matchup against adult mammoths or mastodons, but I believe that Deinonychus may be just a little bit better at clinging on to the side of large prey items. The sickle claw, strong hands, and stabilizing feathers of Deinonychus might make them better at it than their feline contemporaries, but they may not be able to do as much damage to them due to their lighter build. Again, it would only be sick or young individuals that they would realistically have any chance against. Healthy adults would be too much for them to handle. In fact, if you'd like to know a little bit more about mammoths, you can check out the video on the woolly mammoth on my channel. Link is in the description below, or you can head over to the Primeval Posts playlist. Deinonychus gets a pretty good score in this category because their weaponry, size, and hunting strategies make them a pretty powerful force in this new ecosystem. They make up for their slower speed with their unidirectional respiratory system, which presumably would allow them to run at top speed for much longer than mammals. But they'd have a rough time with larger prey items like mammoths and ground sloths. Prey item score, 8 out of 10. Deinonychus will be faced with a lot of different competition throughout the Pleistocene that all present different challenges. These predators include the short-faced bear, Homotherium, Smilodon fatalis, the American lion, as well as wolves, direwolves, and cave hyenas. Let's start with the short-faced bear. Arctodus simus was the second largest mammalian land predator in history, only beaten by its South American cousin Arctotherium. Arctodus is believed to have weighed 1,019 kilograms or 2,246 pounds, and could stand tall as 11 feet or almost 3.5 meters on their hind legs. This bear was a force to be reckoned with on the mammoth steppe. Deinonychus would make use of any carcasses the bears leave behind and vice versa. The giant bear could likely use its imposing size and power to scare off packs of Deinonychus from their own kills. In terms of territorial disputes, it would be mixed. Both of these animals would have a mix of open plain and forest within their borders, and would defend it pretty fiercely. Don't get me wrong, I think a short-faced bear could probably take on a whole pack of Deinonychus, but at what cost? This is something that the bear already dealt with when it comes to big cats or direwolves. The short-faced bear just doesn't have the numbers like many of the other predators in the Pleistocene. Just like wolves and grizzly bears, I think there would be a lot more avoidance than direct conflict. Speaking of wolves, let's now talk about wolves and direwolves. While we now know that direwolves, or Anoscion dirus, aren't really wolves in terms of phylogeny, they were very similar, with direwolves being larger by a small margin. For the sake of simplicity, I'll just be referring to both of them as wolves and ranking them together. I believe wolves will be the most common and intense competition for our raptors. They'll hunt the same prey items and fight over carcasses and territory. The fossil evidence of Deinonychus existing in groups indicates to us that they probably didn't live in very large groups, maybe 3 to 5 individuals give or take. Wolves, however, regularly form packs of 8 to 12 individuals, but packs of 20 to 30 have occurred. The wolves may not be as robust as the Dromaeosaurs, but they certainly have the advantage of numbers. Groups of Deinonychus may try to take advantage of smaller wolf packs, following them as they hunt animals they're better equipped to chase down like elk and caribou, swooping in and using their size and numbers to bully the pack from the corpse. And the same would go for larger packs of wolves against smaller packs of Deinonychus. It's a similar situation with the cave hyena, very similar to today's spotted hyena in both size and behavior. In fact, I believe they're the same species. The cave hyena also roamed the mammoth steppe as both an active hunter and scavenger, so I won't speak too much on that, but it's very similar to the wolf matchup. And then there are, of course, the big cats. The American lion, Homotherium, and the ever-so-famous Smilodon. Most of these big cats had a very similar lifestyle, living in prides much like African lions do today. They likely all had their own lifestyle and preferred prey, but their territory definitely had a lot of overlap. Deinonychus will have to find a way to wedge itself into this situation. Panthera atrox, or the American lion, was the largest big cat that ever roamed the Americas. They're believed to be about 25% larger than their cousin the African lion, Panthera leo. They measured approximately 1.6 to 2.5 meters, or 5.3 to 8.2 feet, with adult males weight estimates ranging from 230 to 360 kilograms, or 500 to 800 pounds, the largest of specimens reaching almost 1,000 pounds. Even with our most robust size for Deinonychus, they have no business taking on the American lions. One-on-one or in a group fight, they're far too large. Smilodon fatalis, though smaller than its southern cousin Smilodon populator, was still a very large predator. Estimates for their size give them a body length of 1.6 to 2.2 meters, 5.2 to 7.2 feet, and a weight of 160 to 280 kilograms, or 350 to 620 pounds. Researchers are still torn on whether or not Smilodon lived in groups, with some believing they lived much like lions, and others believing they were a more solitary ambush hunter like a tiger. If the former is true, it's the same situation as with the American lion. But if the latter is true, Deinonychus could manage to bully a lone Smilodon away from its kill or territory. In a one-on-one fight between these two, Smilodon definitely wins. Finally, there's Homotherium. These guys had a more slender build with longer limbs that suggested they were better built for pursuit on open plains than other cats. They lived farther north than the other big cats, reaching up to Alaska and crossing over to Eurasia. Estimates for their size give them a body length of 1.1 to 1.4 meters, 3.6 to 4.6 feet, and a weight of 150 to 250 kilograms, 330 to 550 pounds. Despite being the lightest of the three big cats we've mentioned, the same applies here. Homotherium prides would be no less a threat than the other cats. Deinonychus might fare a bit better in a one-on-one fight with these guys, but not by much. I think any of these felines take down a Deinonychus, and in a group situation, I think the Deinonychus simply flee. Because though they may have good weapons at their disposal, the pure mass and power behind the big cats is just too much for them to handle. So, though they have a good matchup against wolves, hyenas, and some of the smaller felines, the short-faced bear, the American lion, and the saber-toothed cats would remain as the apex predators and a threat to the raptors. Now, before I give this category a score, I'm going to talk about the elephant, or the hairless ape in the room, humans. Homo sapiens didn't cross the Bering Strait into North America until close to the very end of the Pleistocene, between 15 and 20,000 years ago. This is why I place them in North America specifically, rather than Eurasia or just the Northern Hemisphere broadly. Even early humans are overpowered, and I don't think Deinonychus will have any better of a matchup against them than they do with big cats. Lucky for the raptors, they have a little over 2 million years to establish themselves in the environment, so we'll touch on humans in the final segment of this video. Competition score 4 out of 10. Which brings us to our survival assessment score. 5.5 out of 10. Deinonychus, though it may be well equipped to carve itself a decent niche in the trophic systems of the Pleistocene, just isn't suited for the climate. Even in an interglacial period, they would be very chilly in North America, and will either have to move further south or eat a lot more food to compensate for the sharp drop in temperature. And though Deinonychus isn't unfamiliar with large predators, they are not familiar with so many predators that live in groups like lions, hyenas, and wolves. If raptors did live in packs, they would have been the only predators that did so in their environment. Competition from mammals would be incredibly steep and intense. They'll need to adapt quickly and effectively in order to survive. Cold-blooded killers. Cryonychus notos, the cold southern claw, and Cryonychus arctus, the northern cold claw. In my opinion, the most logical and reasonable progression of Deinonychus evolution in Pleistocene North America is to maintain their current body plan and maximize a handful of traits that would allow them to survive and compete more effectively. Cryonychus are descendants of these adapted Deinonychus that moved further south towards the warmer regions at the end of the interglacial period. Here, they became more successful in a mix of both open and forested environments. To compete with animals like lions, wolves, and saber-toothed cats, they became much larger. The Cryonychus are on average about 4 meters or just over 13 feet long, and weigh about 140 kilograms or 300 pounds, making them a fair bit bigger than their ancestors. They also have become much faster, topping out at 28 miles per hour, or almost 45 kilometers per hour. They can maintain these speeds for up to 5 miles straight, which allows them to run down endurance-based animals like horses.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Also, to better compete with other predators, Cryonychus has a more sophisticated social structure, consisting of a leading mating pair and their offspring, sometimes joined by their siblings or parents. These groups are called castes. A caste of Cryonychus can be anywhere between 4 and 10 individuals, depending on what time of year it is, how many offspring they have, and what resources are available to them. Fledgling Cryonychus will stay with their caste until they reach maturity, where males will go off to find females and form their own caste, and females will stay with their own until a male comes to them. Males will court young females by displaying a spread of bright red feathers underneath their wings. Even if the young female approves, it is actually up to her parent to also approve of the young male and allow her to leave. Their preferred prey items are horses, though they do also hunt deer, camelops, tapir, and occasionally young or sick Megatherium or Mastodon. Cryonychus also has a northern subspecies, Cryonychus arctos, who are a bit larger on average, have darker skin and snow-white feathers. They split off from the southern Cryonychus at the beginning of the next interglacial period, traveling back north and remaining there. They are more or less the same in terms of lifestyle, but hunt animals like caribou, bison, and young or sick woolly mammoths. When humans crossed over the Bering Strait, they began to hunt many of the animals that Cryonychus relied on. As the ice sheets receded and many of these animals went extinct, Cryonychus became less and less common. By the time European settlers arrived in North America, these strange pack-hunting birds were only known to them by stories natives would tell. Some tribes say to this day they live in remote mountains and forests, and many people living on the Alaskan frontier and northern Canadian territories claim to see large dinosaur-like creatures stalking the landscape in far-off flurries. Taekwondosaurus, the Phindactylus numa, or the striking toe of the plains. Phindactylus is a descendant of Deinonychus that has evolved a much larger sickle claw and much more robust and powerful legs, which they use in tandem to kick and slash open the throats and vitals of prey items. They have grown to be considerably larger than their ancestors, reaching about 3 meters or 10 feet tall, 16 feet or nearly 5 meters long, and weighing a substantial 820 pounds or 370 kilograms. They behave quite differently from their cousin the Cryonychus, being solitary for most of their lives, only coming together to fight for mating rights, and then subsequently to raise their young, and will attack anything from lions to mammoths to other Phindactylus if they feel like they are a threat to their territory. I'm sure you can see the similarity between them and terror birds. Phindactylus is not only much larger than they were, but also have not foregone their claws for stubby little wings like them, and their kick is much more deadly and powerful than that of a terror bird. The sickle claw of a Phindactylus is 13 inches or 33 centimeters long, and is capable of slicing open the throat of even large animals like moose or steppe bison. They will use their wide wings and tail feathers to balance themselves while they strike forward with one leg. Their heads are proportionately a bit smaller due to them not really using it as their primary weapon, though their bite force is still on par with hyenas like their ancestors. Once humans crossed over the Bering Strait and ventured down into the modern United States, it wasn't long before these towering raptors were hunted to extinction. The Phindactylus and their eggs were targeted by humans, as they, like many other animals, had almost no defenses against thrown projectiles. They went extinct long before European settlers would arrive, with many other Ice Age animals. Winter Wonderland, the Nevoraptor lemeni, whose name means the snow raptor, or the lemming hawk for short. Nevoraptors are quite small descendants of Deinonychus that inhabit the very far north of North America, reaching even into the North Pole. They grow no larger than most house cats, coming in at an average length of 32 inches long, or 80 centimeters from head to tail, and weighing 10 pounds or 4.5 kilograms. Unfortunately, this decision to become smaller leaves them vulnerable to many predators like wolves, bears, owls, and so on. Nevoraptors' most common prey items are lemmings. In a similar fashion to foxes, Nevoraptors walk along the surface of the snow, feeling for vibrations to hone on the location of the lemming. They then pounce on them, killing them with a single bite. While lemmings are their preferred prey, they also hunt squirrels, weasels, birds, wild hares, and occasionally larger animals like foxes and beavers. They can sometimes accomplish hunting these bigger animals because they live in families. Nevoraptors choose one mate for life, and will raise up to 5 young into adulthood per year. Much like lemmings, they will build and tunnel through deep snow. For this, they have very short, stubby legs with wide feet that act like snowshoes. They use their claws like shovels to push snow out of the way, and even smack the top of their tunnels with their heads to pack the snow and improve structural stability. These tunnels typically have 3 rooms. One small room that acts as a storage for meat or any cool rocks or branches the Nevoraptor decides to keep, another room for the Nevoraptor's nests. This room is later used as a nursery for the hatchlings while they grow, and then there's the main den, where the mating pair of Nevoraptors will cuddle and sleep together in. When humans crossed the Bering Strait, they took note of the Nevoraptors' remarkable hunting skills, and began to befriend them by offering bits of cooked meat, which the raptors would store in their dens. Slowly, Nevoraptors build their dens closer and closer to human settlements, until eventually, they pretty much become domesticated, hunting small game for humans in return for treats and shelter. Thousands of years later, when European settlers arrived, they too found the Nevoraptors useful, and it wasn't long before a bustling pet trade of Nevoraptors emerged. To this day, they still inhabit areas like northern Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and are even becoming a problem in Siberia. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. Of course, if you have any ideas for another episode, leave them in the comments. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As always, big shout out to our patrons, some of which include Lex Gunn, Galactic Narwhal, Green Turret, Tyler Sparks, The Juan Kaiser, Mr. Matt, and Scadu Master, as well as a big shout out to Fluffy Dino, who chose Deinonychus in the Pleistocene as his one-time video of choice as a Tier 4 patron. Another big shout out to Valsimot and Chunky Kong for making some of the art for this video. Anyway, see you next time, dorks!